What's going on, guys? Toxico Cereal, and welcome back to another Brawl Stars video. It's currently like 10:45 at night, and you're probably like, why are you recording a video that late? Well, I was kind of forced to by somebody. We're not going to talk about that. But today's video, we're going to be ranking every single brawler
but in their prime.
Now, what that means is basically their best period of Brawl Stars, like how strong they were, like at the top. We're going to be ranking every brawler based on how strong they were at their best period. Now, this is kind of a very hard list to rank due to the fact that a majority of them were broken. But when I rank it, the lower down, the less broken it was at the peak compared to some other brawlers. And I'm going to save the S+ tier for like the 5 most broken in history, like at any period. So, and how the list goes is it's by rarity and alphabetical order. So Shelly being her own rarity, then the rare brawlers, Barley, Brock, Bull, Colt, Primo, El Primo. It's all in alphabetical order by rarity. So without further ado, I'm not wasting you guys' time. I want to get into the video. Starting off with Shelly. Shelly's most broken period, you can argue too, but in my opinion, it's easily when they buffed her movement speed from normal to very fast. She became the best brawler so easily, and it took a bunch of nerfs. You could argue when Band-Aid first came out, but my god, that movement speed, it was hell. Shelly was everywhere, and it took probably like 3-4 nerfs to finally drop her somewhat. But then she also got the hypercharge. So for me, I don't think she was insanely broken compared to other brawlers, but she's got to be up in the A tier at least. Next up, we have Barley, and Barley's kind of an interesting one because you could say he's pretty good right now. But it has to be when they randomly, I think it was like 2021, I don't remember. For some reason, they randomly buffed his range. And he was so good. Like, I don't think he was like insanely broken. But they were playing him on Backyard Bull. Like one of the most open maps in the game, the pro players. Because his range was just so long. You could snipe people across the map and his damage was good. Don't think it was broken, like insane. But C tier. So, next up we have Brock, and Brock's had a couple. You could say when they buffed his damage to like 1800 back in 2020, or when they completely reworked how his rocket worked. Instead of traveling as far, it blew up in a larger radius. That, for me, though, was easily his peak, his prime. Like, oh my goodness. Like, you could not miss with Brock. His shots were so easy to hit, and it was torture session. Now, I'm going to put it in A tier below Shelly, but, oh god, his shots, they were so hard to dodge. Next up, we have Bull, and Bull, if I'm being honest, has really been a brawler, like, that's been just dog water forever. Like, based when I've played, like, he's really never been that great. I don't know how good he was in beta. He probably wasn't. But for me, like, Bull is, I don't think he's ever had, like, a prime where he's been, like, a top 10 brawler. He did have the bug with his hypercharge, but his hypercharge isn't like the greatest as is. It's a good hypercharge, but it's not like game breaking. So for me, he's got to be F tier. Next up, we have Colt, and Colt's prime easily was the introduction of Silver Bullet. Holy cow, that gadget was so broken. It made Colt like meta in every game mode except for like I don't even know. He was so broken. That gadget just hit like a truck. It did damage for all 6 of his shots. Colt's a very high skill cap brawler, but that gadget just blew through everything. It was so broken. Don't think it was as broken. Like, it's going to go A tier. I'm going to put him below Brock, but A tier easily. Next up, we have El Primo. El Primo has been a really bad brawler. However, he was so broken when they first introduced the tank trait, because El Primo, once he got that first super, he just cycled non-stop. You couldn't stop him. Like, he was so good. Like, easily. He was the best brawler until they nerfed his supercharge rate heavily. But in that time, oh my goodness, he was insane. I'm going to put him below Shelly. Insane. Next up, we have Nita. And Nita's kind of a tricky one because Nita, I feel like, has been kind of like a balanced brawler. But in beta, she could have multiple Bruces. And she also has an insanely good hypercharge right now. So, but for me, I think beta with the infinite Bruce spawning was her best. I don't think it was like insane. I don't really know though. I didn't play in beta. But C tier. Next up, we have Poco, and Poco's prime has to be when they randomly buffed his supercharge rate from 5 to 4 hits. Oh my god, you couldn't kill Poco. Like, he just would cycle supers nonstop. It was impossible to kill Poco. It was ridiculous. Like, a Frank couldn't even kill a Poco back then. It was ridiculous. Don't think it was insanely broken. He wasn't like the best brawler in the game or anything, but he was definitely a top 10 brawler in the game. So I'm going to put him above Barley in the C tier. I don't think it was insanely broken. And next up we have Rosa. Come on now. She was the most broken brawler of all time on release. This is the easiest S+. Like, everybody knows how broken Rosa is on release. Her super lasted for 6 seconds, blocked 80%, and it was torture. It was a torture session. Next up, we have 8-Bit, and 8-Bit, I don't really know. 8-Bit hasn't really been insanely meta, but I do know Plugged In, and that star power was so broken, especially in Showdown. It was a nightmare. So for me, it's going to go in the S tier. That star power was so broken. Like, God, it was unbelievable that they even put a star power like that in the game. Next up, we have Carl, and Carl has kind of been one of those brawlers that's good or bad, but is really never broken. So for me, like Carl's peak, I would have to say, I don't even know. Carl's had a lot of peaks or a lot of primes when I've played the game, but he's like never been like insanely broken because he's always got like a balanced meta. So for me, he's gonna go in the D tier. I could be wrong there, so you might have to challenge that one for me. Next up, we have Darryl. Darryl has been just a trash can of a brawler. However, when they reworked his steel hoops star power to be his base kit, he actually was the best brawler in the game for a little bit, but ever since that, he's been terrible. But honestly, when he was the best brawler, he wasn't like completely broken some others, so I'm actually going to put him in the D tier as well. I'm going to put him above Carl, but that's really Darryl's prime. Next up, we have Dynamike. Dynamike has been kind of a bad brawler as well. However, the introduction of his hypercharge made him really, really strong. But honestly, I don't think Dynamike has really ever had a peak. Like, he's got the satchel charge gadget, and I don't know how good he was in beta. So you might have to comment you might have to comment on that. But Dynamike, I feel like, has always been like kind of an okay brawler. I don't think he's F tier. I'm gonna put him above Darryl. Next up, we have Gus, and Gus on release was pretty strong. But honestly, he didn't get like any nerfs, not to my knowledge, and he kind of just fell off. So, and Gus, that was his prime, and he's getting buffs, and buffs. And he was like not broken. It just, you really couldn't counter him until the sharpshooters got a damage buff. So I feel like he has to go in the D tier, like on the bottom. Like, he wasn't like broken. Like, he didn't get any nerfs, but he just fell off because the meta just fit him before, but then it just didn't. So for me, Gus, I think he's bad. He's the like D tier. Like, next up we have Jackie. Jackie has had, I mean, I think her prime has to be on release because she was really hard to kill. She had that gadget which gave her a big speed boost, and to me, I don't think she was that like crazy. And she also had the hypercharge, which was really, really strong, easily the best hypercharge out of the 6 that came out. But I don't think she's ever had like a broken prime. So for me, I'm gonna put her in the D tier as well. I'm gonna put her above Gus. Next up, we have Jessie, and Jessie's always been a pretty consistent brawler. She has the hypercharge, but when they first reworked her game, because if you didn't know, Jessie's main attack used to deal the same amount of damage on every opponent instead of dealing 25% less damage per bounce. It used to be static. She was awful, but then they reworked it, and she was definitely the best brawler in the game until they nerfed it. So for me, I don't think that was that broken, but for me, it's got to be C tier at least. So I'm going to put it right below Poco. Don't think it was crazy broken, but definitely really strong. Next up, we have Penny. And Penny had a major rework that happened, I believe, in 2022. I don't remember what year it was, but it made her from like just a bad brawler to probably, I don't know if she was the best brawler, but she was one of the best brawlers. She wasn't broken by any means, but she got some emergency nerfs and kept getting nerfs until she became a bad brawler to this day. But for me, she was good, kind of like Jessie. I think she was a little bit stronger than Jessie's prime, so gonna go in the C tier. Next up, we have Rico, and Rico has always been like a consistent brawler. He's like never been a broken brawler. He's had some great metas, but he's never been like insanely broken. I would feel like his peak is when they first introduced the bouncy castle gadget, because that thing healed him so much you couldn't kill him. But for me, I don't think he was insanely broken. He wasn't like the best brawler, but he was easily a top 10 brawler for that period. So for me, I'm going to put him at the bottom of the C tier. Next up, we have Tick, and Tick Tick's an interesting one because Tick had some good peaks, honestly. I think the best peak by far is when they first introduced his last hurrah gadget. The fact that he was immune for that gadget, he was so hard to kill. His supercharge was only 6 hits. His reload speed wasn't as slow as it is today. I don't think it was a crazy peak by any means, but I'm going to put him in the I'm going to put him in the C tier. Above Nita, I would say. Next up, we have Angelo, a relatively new brawler, but on release, he was insanely broken. He was the best brawler in the game by far, besides Melody. Well, he was even better than Melody, but they both were really strong. 2 shots to get a super, 4,400 damage, a mechanically just broken super with the healing. It was so hard to kill him. He had so much range, did so much damage, 8,800 damage. That's crazy. I don't think he was completely broken like some others, but for me, he has to be in the A tier. Has to be. I'm going to put him above Brock, below Colt. Or sorry, below Brock, above Colt. Next up we have Ash, and Ash has had, I feel like, two primes. On release, he was insanely broken because he paired with the Byron, just literally was invincible. But then when they also put in his Rotten Banana gadget, that gadget on release was broken. They emergency nerfed it in like the first couple hours. It was that broken. So for the Ash, like, he wasn't insanely broken. Like, he was the best brawler in the game, but he wasn't like broken like some other brawlers we're going to get to eventually. For me, I'm going to put him at the top of the C tier. I think that's the fair spot. Next up, we have B. And B's prime easily is the introduction of the Rattled Hive gadget. That gadget was so dumb broken. Holy cow. Like, it has to be A tier. It has to be below Colt because B and Colt were like the best 2 brawlers. And then you also had Brock with his gadget, but I kind of forgot about that. But honestly, I don't think Brock was even stronger when he had that range. But B, that Rattle Hive gadget on release was so broken. Holy cow. Next up, we have Belle. Belle, on release, was the best brawler in the game by far. Her super was really hard to hit, but she did a lot of damage. Her bounce was infinite. Her range was longer than Piper's. Like, that was by far her prime. I don't think it was insanely broken, so she's going to be the first B tier. Definitely was a really strong brawler. Next up, we have Barry, a relatively new brawler in the game. Right now, I don't think the meta suits him that well because it's just so tanky, but mechanically, right now, he's broken. His sting lasts for 6 seconds. He heals. He charges super when he heals. So for me, it's kind of a pre-ranking, but I think Barry could be an insanely broken brawler in the history. So right now, I'm going to put him in the A tier. I'm going to put him all the way in the top because that's, I think, right now, I just don't think the meta's fair, and this is kind of a pre-prediction. But if the meta wasn't so full of Frank, Meg, and Lily with all the assassins and capabilities, I think Barry would easily be the best brawler in the game. Not even close. Next up, we have BB. BB has really never been like an insanely good brawler. She's had a couple peaks, the hypercharge, you could say, but I think their best peak by far is when her batting stance used to give her a 30% shield. She was pretty hard to kill. She also had the gadget. But honestly, I don't think BB was that good. So for me, I'm going to put her in the D tier. I don't think she's F tier like Bull. Like, she's had a decent meta. I'm going to put her above Gus. Like, I don't think she's had like an insanely broken period. Next up, we have Bo, and Bo definitely is when they buffed his damage from like 1,200 to 1,400. Bo did way too much damage. It wasn't that hard to hit his shots. He would shred people to pieces. He wasn't like the best brawler, but he was easily a top 5 brawler. He was arguably the best brawler in the game. So for me, he's gonna go below Bell in the B tier. Like, he's had that meta was so busted with him in it. Next up, we have Bonnie, and Bonnie on release was really strong. I don't think by any means she was broken, but God, she was really strong. And it took her a while before they finally killed her. But honestly, like, she was one of the brawlers I pushed to rank 30. She wasn't like insanely broken because her shots were pretty easy to hit. She didn't deal that much damage. It was just that her gadget, her super, and just her landing on you, she would just shred you to pieces. So for me, I don't think she was that broken. So I'm going to put her above Barley. That's kind of it. Next up, we have Colette. Colette is a tricky one because I feel like the best, her prime by far was the introduction of her hypercharge. No question. Now, she's had metas that fit her, but that's really doesn't like count as the prime. For me, because she had the gotcha gadget, that's an insane gadget. I don't know how it still hasn't been nerfed, but the hypercharge just decimated. It didn't take that much to cycle, but she was not the best brawler in the game, but she was definitely top 10. So for me, I'm going to put her bottom of C tier. Next up, we have Edgar. Edgar's had 2 really strong metas. On release, he was everywhere because everybody got him for free. But you also have his hypercharge, which was insanely broken when it came out. So for both of those are really good. I think Edgar definitely was the best brawler, or the second best brawler, because he also had Byron. But when the Hypercharge came out, he was a top 3 brawler easily, no question. So for me, I'm gonna put him. He's gonna be at the top of the C tier. Next up, we have Ems, and Ems, honestly, she's unreleased. She was really strong, and she's had a lot of good metas. But honestly, I don't think Ems has really never had an insanely good prime where she's by far been the best brawler. So for me, I'm gonna put her in the D tier. I'm gonna put her above Jackie. Next up, we have Frank, and you'd be surprised, Frank is currently in his prime. Well, he did get a nerf. Let's be real, I didn't do anything. Frank right now, he's so busted. He's not like top 5 most broken in history, but by far right now, he is the second best brawler in the game behind Meg, which we'll get to eventually. So for me, he's got to be up in the A tier. I don't think he's going to be in the S tier because those are for like insanely broken brawlers, but A tier, fair. Next up, we have Gale, and Gale on release was pretty bad, but then he also got that buff. But he's been getting a lot of changes. Like, I feel like his prime was after he got a bunch of buffs after his release. That was his prime because he had that jump. He had the jump gadget that was just insanely broken. But you could say right now he's really strong because he has a bug with the super where it just does way too much damage. He has a really good hypercharge. So for me, I think Gale is going to go in the C tier. I'm going to put him above or below Ash. So. Next up, we have Griff, and Griff on release was kind of, like, seems strong, but honestly, I don't think Griff has really ever been insanely meta. Like, he's been a good brawler because his supercharge rate was good, but he wasn't, like, by any means broken. It was just, he just did a lot of damage, but he's getting a bunch of changes, so I'm going to put him in the D tier. He's going to go above Jackie. Next up, we have Grom. And Grom on release was so broken. Honest to God. His shots were so easy to hit because it didn't have the consistency. It would just drop. Like, you could auto-aim shots and deal damage. His super was humongous. It was so easy to hit. You couldn't mess with him. He's easily A tier. I don't think he's going to be in the S tier, but I'm going to put him below Shelly. Because, God, he was so broken on release. My God. Next up, we have Hank. Hank on release was unbelievably broken. He was the best brawler in the game. By far. It wasn't even close. He had so many bugs with his damage that he dealt 10,000 damage. He could heal up while charging his bubble. You couldn't see him in bushes. His super took 3 hits no matter what the charge. Yeah, he's S tier. He's S tier easily. Next up, we have everybody's favorite brawler, Larry and Laurie. Do we really need to talk about this brawler? Holy cow, S+. Top 5 most broken in history. On release, they were so dumb broken. Holy cow. They did 1,680 damage for 1 tick, and he has 2 ticks. His shot is huge, it's super easy to hit. A gadget that healed them up 33% of the time. A super that took only 5 hits to charge, and you could constantly cycle it. 2 insanely broken star powers, because the first one transferred all the damage to Laurie, and the second one was just a cheat code and heist. So, yeah, oh my God, like, do we really need to talk about this brawler? S+, easily, no question. Next up, we have Lola, and Lola on release definitely has her prime. Literally, the fact that you could drop the ego right on top of her and deal the double the DPS, you could not kill her. Like, you just got shredded into pieces. She was the best brawler in the game by far. I pushed her to rank 30 in, like, the first month I got her. So, for me, A tier. I'm going to put her right above Grom, below Shelly. Next up, we have Maisie, and Maisie on release sucked. But her best prime by far was the introduction of her hypercharge where she just team wiped. She was the best brawler in the game easily. She wasn't like insanely broken because they nerfed her and killed her. But for me, oh God, she was really strong. I pushed her to rank 30. I'm going to put her all the way in the top of the C tier. Next up we have Mandy, and Mandy is currently in her prime, which is surprising. Mandy is going to be the second brawler I put in the F tier. Mandy has really never been a great brawler. On release, she wasn't that great. She's received buffs and buffs, but she's really never been like a top 15, 30 brawler in the game. This is by far her best prime, and she's decent right now, but honestly, she's really never been a top 20 brawler. Like, not even close. Next up, we have my favorite brawler, Nani, who just recently was in their prime, where she got that huge damage buff, where she did 4,800 damage and can one-shot brawlers like Spike. And she was a top 10 brawler in the game, but other than that, that was her prime by far. And she's really never been that like insane of a brawler. So I hate to do it, but she's got to go in the D tier. And I'm gonna put her below. I'm gonna put her almost at the bottom. She's really never been like an insanely broken brawler. Next up, we have Pam. And Pam's another interesting one. Like, she's never been, like, insane. She's been a top 10 brawler before, because when they first buffed her healing with the super, she healed a lot, the mythic gear, the scrap sucker gadget. But honestly, I think Pam is another brawler like Nani, where she's never really been, like, a great brawler. So I'm actually going to put her above Nani. Next up, we have Pearl, and Pearl is an interesting brawler because on release, she wasn't that great. Like, she was good. She had that overcooked gadget, but her movement speed was a little bit slower than normal. Then they buffed her movement speed, and she was by far one of the best brawlers in the game. I don't think she was the best brawler, but she was pretty strong, but not that great, to be honest. So for me, I'm actually going to put her in the D tier. I'm going to put her above Darryl, below Dynamike. Next up, we have Piper, and Piper's an interesting one because she's been very strong, but in the past, where her range was super long, I might be a little bit uncertain on this one, but her range in the past was so long. Holy cow. So for me, Piper, I'm going to put her, I don't really know where to put her, so I'm going to put her in the middle of the C tier because I don't really know. She definitely was stronger in beta, in my opinion, but she's had some good primes right now. Next up, we have Sam, and Sam's prime easily was on his release because that star power was so broken. Like, what the heck? You could not kill him. It's still broken today, but it wasn't as broken as it was on release. So for me, Sam, he's going to go in the C tier. I'm going to put him right below Ash. Next up, we have Stu, and Stu on release was insanely broken. He did a lot of damage, had a decent amount of health. He had a good gadget, but the best thing by far was his super knocked back enemies. It was so broken. It was insane. They had to completely remove it. S tier for sure. Stu is going on the top of the S tier. Next up, we have Buster, another brawler that was insanely broken on release. Jesus God, like, oh my God, he did so much damage. It was unbelievable how much damage Buster did. He didn't have the slow-mo replay gadget yet, but then he eventually got it. But his first gadget used to heal him a lot. His second star power used to give him a 20% shield. He was just, oh my God, it was just so hard to kill Buster because the team synergy was insane. So for me, he's going to be in the top of the A tier. Next up, we have Buzz. Buzz has really never been like an insane brawler. If we're talking about Prime, it's when they introduced his hypercharge. The problem, though, is that he actually, like, obviously he was tested with the hypercharge, but when he finally when it was added into the game, it wasn't as broken as it was, because it used to infinitely give him supers no matter what. Now it only gives them if he hits a wall. Really good hypercharge, but honestly, Buzz, he's never had, like, a top 10 moment. So for me, he's going to be towards the bottom of the D tier. I'm going to put him above Jackie. Next up, we have Byron, and Byron was insane on release. Just as good as Edgar, but if not a little bit better. He had a little more HP, did a lot of damage, had an insane reload speed, a gadget that healed him, broken synergies with brawlers like Ash and stuff like that. Byron was just a menace because his shots were not that hard to hit, and it's the poison stack. So for me, I don't think he was that crazy broken. Put him right in the center of the B tier. Next up, we have Charlie. Charlie, top 5 most broken brawler in history. On release, she was broken as heck because you could spam her yo-yo. Her super lasted for 10 seconds. You lost 50% of your HP when you came out of the cocoon. Her spider's gadget was insanely broken. You came out of the cocoon with no ammo. Super took 5 hits to charge. What was not broken about this brawler? Her hypercharge kind of sucked, but it don't matter. Everything about this brawler was so broken. I pushed her to rank 30 because it took no skill. Broken. Next up, we have Chuck, and when he was released, he was the best brawler in the game. He only got 1 nerf, and the fact that he didn't start with the super, but Chuck, he was really good. Heist, broken as hell. But in every other game mode, he wasn't, like, broken. But the fact that he could come onto, like, the hot zone or get back into the game immediately with an immunity shield, it was just really a pain. So I don't think it was crazy broken, but definitely C tier worthy. I'm going to put him right above Sam. Next up, we have Clancy, a brand new brawler that is just in pre-release right now. You have to buy him to get him. But Clancy, he's like, I don't know how to rank him. He's got a very, very broken super, that's for sure, and he does a lot of damage. The problem is you have to get his level, so it's kind of a pre-ranking. So for now, I don't think he's going to be that broken. We'll have to wait and see. So it's kind of a pre-ranking for right now. I'm going to put him as the top of the D tier because I don't think he's going to be that good in competitive play because it's just not going to be that easy to feed him. Next up, we have Doug. You want to say F, okay? But hear me out. When he first got that change, though, that his damage scaled properly in terms of like being consistent, not dealing less damage the further away the brawler is. He had a bug with his healing that made him heal for 2,400 every hit. Doug was insane. Like, you could not kill his team. Like, Doug would just continuously heal them. It was insane. But other than that, Doug has always been just a terrible, terrible brawler. So, but for that reason alone, I'm going to put Doug on the bottom of the D tier. That's the only reason he escapes the F tier. Next up, we have Eve. Eve on release was insanely broken. Like, the fact that her Happy Surprise star power had no cooldown. She had the same range as basically all the other sharpshooters. She did a lot of damage. Oh, God. It was hatchling central. Don't think she was as broken as some of the A tier brawlers, but B tier, top of B tier, easily. Next up, we have Fang. He's had two primes, but for me, it has to be the introduction of his hypercharge. Like, you could say on release he was insanely broken because he could charge that fresh kicks off anything, but his hypercharge, the fact that if you got a kill with fresh kicks, like, what the... Dude, his hypercharge release was so broken. He was the best brawler in the game by far. You could, like, once he got his hypercharge, it was over. Team wipe, team wipe, team wipe, team wipe, team wipe. Especially in 5v5, team wipe, team wipe, team wipe. It was broken. Broken. S tier. Putting him on the bottom of S tier. Don't care. It was ridiculous. Next up, we have Gene, and Gene has had, like, he's had a decent prime where he did a lot of damage. It only took him 3 hits to get a super, and he was pretty strong. I don't think he was completely broken, but I'm gonna put him in the C tier. I'm gonna put him above Bonnie. So right here. Next up, we have Gray, and Gray on release. Oh my God, he was broken. Like, I could say with confidence, he had to be the best brawler in the game. He had his grand piano gadget, with humongous. That thing broke up the whole map. They had to emergency nerf it. He still has the walking cane gadget, which is also really strong. But, God, that gadget blew up the whole map. He had insanely broken strategies where he could teleport his whole team instantaneously. Like, what the heck? Seriously, A tier. I'm going to put him above Frank. Like, oh my God. Woohoo. Next up, we have Janet, and Janet has been one of the best brawlers in the game for such a long time. She's finally in a state where she's absolutely terrible, but she was so consistent for such a long time, but her peak has to be on release. She was insane. She had a great gadget, good star power. She was just so versatile. That was the best thing about Janet. Like, she didn't seem broken, but she was broken, if you know what I mean. So for me, I'm going to put her on the top of the C tier. Like, she wasn't insanely broken, but that's her peak by far. Next up, we have Lily, and her prime literally just happened. Before she got the emergency nerfs, when they buffed her ammo from 1 to 2, she deleted, like, everything. Now, the nerfs did catch up to her, but she was so... Oh, my God, she was so broken. And she has that broken gadget, and she also has the other trash gadget. I'm kidding. The gadgets, it's okay, but still. I gotta go S tier. Like, God, she was by far one of the most broken brawlers. Like, it has to be. I'm gonna put her all the way below Stu. Next up, we have Lou. And Lou he's always been just not the greatest brawler. And I'm actually a decent Lou, but his prime by far, easily, the introduction of his hypercharge. It was so broken, easily. He was a top 5 brawler in the game. He cycled it pretty quickly, and you just could, like, basically team wipe. So for me, that hypercharge gives him the edge. I'm going to put him in the C tier. I'm going to put him above Piper. Next up, we have Max, and Max has had a bunch of good metas, and it's really, I don't know what her prime is, to be honest, because she's had so many of them. You could say right now with the hypercharge, you could say when she had the supercharge, the running gun star power. Max has just always been, like, the most versatile brawler in the game now. She's not a fun brawler to play by any means, but she's had so many peaks where she's been a top 5 brawler in the game, the best brawler in the game. So for me, she's going to go in the C tier. I'm going to put her below Maisie. Could argue B tier. I wouldn't be mad if you did. Next up, we have Melody. Melody on release was insane. She had the gadget, a lot of HP, and mechanically just was insane. So for me, I'm going to put her in the top of the B tier. I don't think she was as broken as Angelo, but she was insane. Like, I pushed her to rank 32. She became the second brawler I had in rank 32. Next up, we have Miko. And Miko, I don't think has ever received a balance change. He's a relatively new brawler that seemed quite strong on release, but if I'm being honest, he's kind of like in around the middle. He's on the weaker end right now, but on release, he was quite strong. He did have that bug in Showdown where the power cube scaling was wrong, but he's never received a nerf. So for me, Miko, he's got to be in the bottom of the C tier. That bug was insane, but he wasn't like broken. You could argue D tier, to be honest. Next up, we have Mortis, and Mortis has had, I don't know, Mortis is kind of a tricky one to rank because Mortis has kind of been a bad brawler for a while. But I think I would have to say his prime was either in beta where he could dash across the whole map, or I would say when you had they reworked the coiled snake star power to be the B baseline. So, and then Creepy Harvest was really strong, but honestly, I don't know. I don't think Mortis has really ever been that great. So for me, I'm going to put him in the D tier above BB. Next up, we have Mr. P. Mr. P's prime either was in the Gale Surge Mr. P meta, which I don't know why he was strong, but for me, it has to be the introduction of that Porter Reinforcements gadget. That gadget was so broken. Like, the fact that you could just throw a Porter on a sharpshooter, they were dead. Like, they had to waste all their ammo on it. It was dumb. It was dumb, but honestly, well, he wasn't that broken, so I'm going to put him on the top of the D tier. Next up, we have Otis, and Otis on release sucked, but then he got that kind of a rework buff, which made him the best brawler in the game. He wasn't, like, by any means broken, but he was a really strong brawler. So for me, he's got to go in the C tier, and I'm going to put him towards the bottom. So next up, we have Colonel Ruffs, and on release, he was insane. He was the best brawler in the game by far. But the thing about him is he had the sandbags gadget, which was really good, but he could just spam his attack. Like, he could just be pew, dead, over, cooked, destroyed. He wasn't like broken like Bell, but he's got to be in the C tier as well. I'm going to put him right below Maisie. He was really good. Next up, we have RT. And RT on release, God, he was so insanely strong. They nerfed him a couple times. He had that gadget, and overall, just a super decimated. You could spam it. Like, it was crazy. Like, and God, oh, it was so toxic. But I don't think it was like as broken as like brawlers like Eve. He did get a couple nerfs, so I'm gonna put him right below Colonel Ruffs. Next up, we have Sprout. Oh, Sprout, man, with the overgrowth star power, impossible to miss. Like, he was, oh my God, I have no words to describe. He's got to be a top 5 broken brawler in history. Not as broken as Larry and Laurie, not as broken as Charlie, but Sprout, oh my God, insanely broken. Next up, you have Squeak, and Squeak's prime easily is when they reworked that residue gadget to have a slowing effect. 20 seconds? What? And then he also had the chain reaction star power. You could also say that, but other than that, Squeak's really never been like an insanely broken brawler. He's been the best brawler in the game, but not by a lot. So for me, he's gonna go in the D tier. I'm gonna put I don't know, right above Darryl. Next up, we have Tara, and Tara's an interesting one because I feel like Tara's been in good metas, but she's also been in bad metas. So for me, but I don't think Tara's ever been like by far the best brawler in the game. I don't think she's ever been like a top 5 brawler consistently. So for me, I'm going to put her in the D tier. I'm going to put her basically at the bottom. I don't think she's ever had like an insane prime. Next up, we have Willow, F tier. Like, we don't need to talk about her. Willow has never, ever been good. She's always been a bad brawler, and she still is to this day. So for me, it's the easiest F tier. By far, she's the worst one. She's never ever had a good prime. Like, she's probably in her prime right now, but she's still not that great. Next up, we have Amber, and Amber got to be on release. She had a very fast movement speed. What? And you could just block down enemies. Now, a lot of people didn't know about the auto aim mechanic, but she was the best brawler in the game by far. You could also say that with the Dancing Flame gadget and that buff she just got with her damage, that was also really good. But for me, the prime, easily on her release. I'm going to put her in the C tier, right below Max. Next up, we have Chester. Chester on release was really strong, kind of like Gray. Wasn't as broken because mainly the thing that just carried him was the damage and that stun the stun super. By far the best thing. But other than that, Chester wasn't like completely game breaking compared to how good Gray was. So Chester, I'm going to put in the C tier. I'm going to put him, I would say, right above Jean. Next up, we have Cordelius. Cordelius is easily an S tier. He was so dumb broken. Like, it wasn't even fair. The fact that you could continuously cycle supers, he had the poison mushroom gadget, which basically muted, it was half an Otis super, charged the super in the Shadow Realm, did a lot of damage, what was not broken about this brawler? Let's be real. Next up we have Crow. And Crow, his prime has to be when his slowing toxin lasted for 5 seconds with all of the buffs he's gotten. But he wasn't that broken. He was a top 5 brawler in the game, but he wasn't like insane. So for me, I'm going to put him in the D tier. Might shock you guys. I'm going to put him above Nani. Next up, we have Draco, a relatively new brawler. He was really good on release. He wasn't like broken. He has that gadget, which just straight up should have never been put into the game. But I don't think he wasn't the best brawler in the game. He was a top 5 brawler easily, but he was not the best brawler in the game. He was good for broken synergies. He deals a lot of damage. It was just, but other than that, I don't think he's really been like insane. So I'm actually going to put him in the D tier below Clancy. Next up, we have Kit. Now, Kit, oh man, I have to put more people. Kit on release, oh god, was insane. I don't think he was as broken as Larry and Laurie, but easily S+. It has to be S+. He was so broken in every archetype. He had a bugged gadget, just a super that did a billion damage, immune when he jumped on an enemy, 4,000 damage on a teammate, a bug in Showdown, a star power that was just made him even better in Showdown, and just what was not broken about this brawler? If the enemy team got this brawler, it was over. Game over. Next up, we have Leon, S+, second best brawler of all time. Unbelievably broken on release. Did a lot of damage. Didn't have the thing where you could see the enemy and the super, and just all that stuff. Next up, we have Meg. Meg's another one. She has to be on the top of the S tier because she's had 3 peaks. On release, she was insanely strong, pretty much the best brawler in the game by far. When they reworked her the first time to start in mech form, the best brawler in the game after subtle nerfs, and currently in her prime right now, she decimates every brawler in the game. She does way too much damage. Why do they keep making Meg so strong? You could argue S+. I won't be mad if you put her on the bottom of S+. Next up, we have Sandy. Sandy, you could say the introduction of his hypercharge, but for me, it has to be when it took him only 5 hits to charge his super. It was constant, non-stop cycles. Unbelievable. Best brawler. He was insane. So for me, C tier, put him above Piper. Next up, we have Spike. And Spike has always been a top brawler. I would say his prime is probably the intro of his hypercharge. If I'm being honest, I don't really know. Spike's always... Oh, actually, no. It's got to be the introduction of the Life Flag gadget. That gadget was so good. It had as much health as Spike. If not, it had more health than Spike. It was ridiculous. It was really hard to kill him. So for me, I'm going to say C tier, though, because he wasn't, like, insanely broken. He was the best brawler in the game, though, for sure. No question. And finally, we have Surge. Surge and on release with that star power, my goodness, it was torture. Like, he had the gadget, which teleported him, and then he had the star power, which, to the max, split no matter what. So if you got Surge to stage 4, you were cooked. You had nothing you could do. Like, he just shredded people into pieces. And for me, he's going to be the bottom of the S tier, and that's going to wrap up this list. I hope you guys enjoyed. You'd have to let me know in the comments, agree, disagree. This was really a really challenging one to rank because, like, I don't know most of the Brawlers' primes myself, and it's kind of hard to rank primes because everybody was in their prime in a different state. So this is kind of my opinion. You have to let me know if I missed a prime that should have raised the brawler. That's going to be it for this video, though, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.